all. We are product people and we conduct talks related to product management. And if you would like to know a bit more about the community, you can join us on Telegram. And if you like what we do and intrigued, you can definitely support us on patreon.com. So today we have speaker Katya, and she is a product manager at gutefrage.net. And she's going to talk about how to integrate experimentation and research in the product backlog to maintain the state of art. So I'll hand over to you, Katya. Stop sharing. Super.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning from Munich. I'm sharing my screen right now, so let me know if you can see it.
Yes.
Great, awesome. Yeah, my name is Katya. I'm a product manager at gutefrage.net. And today I will talk to you about how to integrate research and experiment into your backlog in order to keep up with the state of the art. Before I jump to my talk, a few words about myself, who I am actually, and what I'm doing here. So since 2019, I work at Gutefrage as a product manager with a focus on data aspect of the product. My team is dealing with computational linguistics, natural language processing, machine learning, deep learning, data analysis, data engineering. Before this, I was working in another company called Genie as a product owner, fancy title semantics, but at the end of the day, it was also a lot of data, computational linguistics, and also computer vision, so machine learning data. Before that, I was doing my PhD and working as a research assistant at the university, also with the focus on automated content analysis, so machine learning and computational linguistics again. And before PhD, I was mainly working as a computational linguist on different projects. So as you can see, I have done a lot, and I'm still doing a lot with machine learning, deep learning, artificial intelligence, really with the focus on computational linguistics. And that's my background, that's where I'm coming from, and that's the angle from which I will be talking to you today. So bear that in mind, that whenever I talk about research, I mainly share my experience about research in data product teams. So as you see, I have background in academia, in academic research, and also in, let me put it this way, industrial research. Is there actually a difference between research and research? So if you're at the university and you're doing your research over there, so your research cycle can look as follows. So first you pick an area of your interest, what you want to research. And there you can go with your heart, or you can pick what is fancy currently. So once you know what your field of interest is, you do your literature study, right? Like, you want to check what other people did before you. So first of all, to pay due respect, then to build your research upon something, and then to avoid double work, right? I don't want to do what others people have already done. You know your literature, you know where the gaps are, so you can formulate your hypothesis, you know what you want to test or to prove. You design the study, you run it, and then you analyze the results. When you analyze the results, the question you're asking yourself is, do my results support my hypothesis? If they don't support your hypothesis, you go back to analysis, right? Maybe you did something wrong, maybe your analysis was wrong. If your results still do not support your hypothesis, then you have to rephrase it. You come up with a new hypothesis, and you go in the whole cycle again. Once you found the hypothesis that's worked, so you have your statement, it is proved by data, then you're a successful researcher, and you can go ahead and report your results. And normally it happens in the form of a paper, right? So you publish a paper. So if you generalize it, the purpose of research in academia is to find a general solution which works for many, many cases, so like to create a new state of the art. And the product of academic research, if you will, is a knowledge which usually comes in the shape of papers. What happens in industry? So first of all, I would like to mention that when I speak about research in industry, I don't mean big companies, big corporations, they have dedicated research teams or R&D departments like Facebook, for example, or Google, right? They have dedicated research teams that might be cooperating with universities, that might be supervising master or PhD thesis. they publish papers. When I talk about research and industry, I mean like regular product teams who work on features, who work on, if you work in agile framework, then probably they work with user stories, with requests from the users, and how to integrate research into this typical product backlog. So you start with a problem, right? Before you commence any type of research, you need to have a problem which you want to solve. And research is one of the ways you can solve your problem. Usually it's a product problem, right? It may be user pain point, user need, or like you know better what your problems are. The next step is similar to the academic research. So you check what other people did before, like before you, what papers are available out there, you read blogs, you look into code and so on and so forth. And then you pick up solutions, approaches that you believe will work for you, and you apply them to your problem. So you try to solve your problem with those approaches. Here you can have multiple iterations, you can try different approaches, right? Then you analyze your results. And the question you answer when you do research in academia is, does this approach solve my problem? In case it doesn't solve a problem, then again, you might want to analyze your results again. Maybe you just need to do a bit more of literature research and try a bit more of approaches. And when you actually found the solution that works for you, the next question you ask, can I actually deploy it? Can I actually take it live? Whenever we do research, at least in my team, we usually do it in a fast way in forms of prototypes, which is not production ready code. And oftentimes it may happen that your production environment is not ready enough to run this, or it doesn't meet, the prototype doesn't meet other requirements. It might be too slow, too big, you cannot run it on your mobile device, whatnot. If this is the case, then again, you might want to fine tune something. You might want to check how other people solve this problem and maybe try to actually bring it live. However, if it doesn't work for you, then, well, unfortunately, it doesn't work for you. If you're lucky enough and you can find the way how your cool prototype works in your production environment, then you go ahead and deploy. What is important to keep in mind as a product owner, you can quit the circle at any time. So the no can happen at every step. And if you see that it takes too long, or you don't think that it's promising enough, or you have higher priorities, it's okay to stop at any time. So let me show you an example how it works with in my case with text products. So let's say my problem is I have a bunch of texts, a large corpus of texts, which I want to categorize into two categories: fake news and real news. So this is my problem. I go ahead and do my literature research. I apply, I found out, okay, I have 5 solutions that might help to solve my problem, that can categorize text into categories. So let's, and I'm lucky enough to find a paper which was published last week, which describes a new fancy language model. The code is also available on GitHub and it's open source, so I'm really lucky. I apply the language model to my problem. And then what is very important, by analysis, it's always, oftentimes it's documentation. So always document your results. Whatever you do, it has to be documented. Oftentimes research is not successful, unfortunately, and that's also fine. But in order to know what you did before, you really have to write down what you did before, what went well, what didn't go well, what stopped you from deploying. So documentation is like really key. And then I documented my research. My problem actually is not being solved. So I find out that classification results are not as good as I expected. I'm not happy with them. So I go ahead and fine tune this language model, right? I play with hyperparameters. I maybe reduce the number of hidden layers. I document again. I document each step I'm taking. And I find out that this time classification problem is solved, and like the results of classification are way better. Can I actually deploy it? And then I might find out that the model is too big. I cannot save it on a mobile device, and the inference time is actually too slow. It takes 5 minutes for a model to predict whether text is a piece of fake news, but my users want to have it in a couple of seconds. So I go back, I tweak, I play with hyperparameters, I talk to my ops team, can we have this model run on our production system? And then again, like if I'm lucky, probably we can do it, we can make it happen. We deploy the model, users are happy, the problem is solved. If it's not gonna work, well, then I say no, sorry. And I document everything and I wait until better times to come. Why do I want to do research? Why is it actually needed in product teams, right? With the limited capacity, with other stores that have probably high priorities and users complaining, why do we do research in product teams? So reason number one, in my opinion, is fighting technical debt. I think we'll agree that it's bad to have technical debt. We don't want to grow it. We don't want to be using state-of-the-art technology. I think we will all agree that a smartphone is better than a landline old phone from the 50s, right? So, and research is a cool way to fight the debt. Then research can solve a problem, right? Like, as I said, like we do not do research for the sake of research, but we do it because we want to solve a problem and we believe that this is the best way to solve a problem. And the solved problem is a good problem. Another reason is when you do research, it helps to keep your team technically fit. So the team will learn new skills, the team will learn to work with new technology, they will be technically stronger, eventually they will be developed faster and better solutions. What is also important, it will help you to retain, to keep your team. What I've seen that oftentimes developers, when they have mastered all technologies available at your teams, they get bored and they are very likely to switch either to another team or to another company. So as long as they can grow professionally within your team and play with new technology, it's more likely that they will actually stay with you on your team. Research is especially important in the field of machine learning and artificial intelligence because this is a very dynamic field. It develops rapidly, and you really want to catch up with the field, with the industry, and at least be aware of what is a state of the art. You might not necessarily use it, but you should be aware of it, and research is necessary for that. Research can actually speed up your development curve. So what I mean by that, when we use new technology, we usually use better technology, right? So new technology is usually better because you don't pick up something that no one knows. You pick up something that other people are using. They say that this is good. It has good reviews. So you decide, when you see that something is being talked about and many people use it, you decide, okay, let's try to use it in my team. And of course, whenever you start using something new at the beginning, you will be very slow. So at the beginning, the development speed will be really slow, and the curve will look rather flat. But once your team have mastered the new technology, then they can develop way faster and way cooler things. So the development speed curve will go up. So these are the whys, and now the hows or the whats. And now will be sharing with you what works for me, what we figured out in my team, what works for us as a team, how we integrate research. This is just experience sharing. So first, it is important to fail fast. Whenever you do something researchy, without, let's say, concrete outcome, which is not touchable, which maybe your users cannot see as a feature, fail fast. And here it is important to break down your user story, your research user story, in small steps so you can discover the failure as early as possible. Don't be afraid to fail. Or like negative result is also a result. So if you find out that this new fancy language model doesn't solve our problems and doesn't work for us for multiple reasons, that's fine. That's also a finding, that's a learning. The purpose of research is to solve a problem, but also to learn something. So another side product, so to speak, is knowledge. Don't overcomplicate when you do research. What I mean by that is Really think critically what problem you have, and do you really need that fancy language model to solve your problem? Like, is it like really worth it going into this multiple layers architecture to really classify text into categories? Maybe something simpler like a naive Bayes can do the thing, right? So don't really overcomplicate it. Like, research is good, but only as long as it solves your problem. Don't do research for the sake of research. A trick that works for our team: we always time box research stories instead of giving it story points. So during groomings, when we estimate stories, we really time box it. Why do we do it in such a manner? Because a research story is full of unknown variables and lots of uncertainty there. If you give it a 3 or a 5 story points, you never know whether it will be true. You might fail at the first step, so it will be a very small story, or you might actually take days, and if you see, okay, it works, it looks promising, then you might want to develop it into an epic, if you will. So for our team, like, we really time box research stories, and that really works very well. For research story, as much as for your regular user stories, clear acceptance criteria are crucial. So whatever requirements you have for acceptance criteria for regular stories, try to apply them to research as well. Define your baseline. So either compare your research results to existing solution, or if you don't have solution yet and you are trying out different approaches, then choose one of them as a baseline and compare all others against them. Define your KPIs and metrics. So whenever you do research, try to use the same KPIs that you use for your product, how you measure that your product is successful. Try to apply the same metrics to really see if your research brings something, whether it brings additional value to your product. And whenever you're working on a research thing, always keep in mind, let it be guiding you. So if we pursue this approach, will we have better results? So your purpose is to have better results, to solve problems, to make your users happier. So as long as you don't have better results, you don't do this. Keep in mind the trade-off or impact between impact and effort. Again, this is true for all user stories, but for research stories is very, very true. Think critically whether it's worth investing that much time and effort into a new fancy algorithm and new fancy technology, and what will be the benefit, the value that you will develop. Is it like really worth it? As I mentioned before, documentation is very important. So document your learnings, whether it's a success, whether it's a failure, document everything. This is also will be important for other team members so that they can learn from you. And this will be important for new team members. So if somebody new is coming, someone fresh from the university and says, hey guys, like in my master thesis, I dealt with this new language model, and I believe this will work for your problem. And you can say, here, we ran this experiment, it didn't work. So please read it through and say what we did wrong, or maybe it just doesn't work for us. Documentation will also be useful for developer, because in 6 months or in 12 months, if you want to get back to this problem, to this approach, you want to know what you did before. What I learned from my experience, that transparency and communication are important if you do something researchy. Oftentimes, other teams, or especially like management level, they're very suspicious and skeptical about doing research and experimenting without, let's say, proper outcome. And that's fine, right? Like if people, like let's say, if your management level, they're not techies, they are goals driven, they're revenue driven, so they have other mindset. So it's important to convince them, to explain what you are doing and why this is important. And for that, documentation is the key, so that everyone has access to the results, everyone can read and understand what's happening. KPIs are important, because that's the tool, KPIs are the language that the whole team, the whole company is speaking, right? So then if you can convince your management in terms of, okay, like we spent 1 week on researching and experimenting with this new algorithm, but we believe that like if it is successful, so we invest 1 week time, but we believe that if we're successful, we can improve our KPIs by 10%. I think no one will really complain that you invested this time. Another thing which, if in case you want to really do research regularly in your product team, another thing you might consider is introducing dedicated KPIs to track your research progress. So what I mean by that is, for example, you want to have a specific number of research user stories per month, and that will be your KPI, right? Like you want to have 2 research stories per month in your team. Or for example, what we did in my previous company, in that company we were working with OKRs. Maybe some of you know this framework. It stands for objectives and key results. And in our research team, so we were setting ourselves like research objectives, and we were using the number of run experiments as a KPI to measure our key results. So we would set up ourselves a goal. So in this quarter, I want to run 5 experiments. And then at the end of the quarter, we could see and compare ourselves against what we promised. And another cool thing of how you can do research and keep your team technically fit, and it's a cheap way, so to speak. You can have regular knowledge exchange sessions, for example, in a shape of a reading group. So set up a meeting. It can be every 2 weeks, it can be every 3 weeks, every 4 weeks. It doesn't need to be long, 1 hour is enough. And then one by one, each team member reads up on a paper which was published recently, which is state of the art, and they present the paper to the team. It might not be the paper, it might be their own experience, another tool they tried, the experience from their job, and just have this knowledge sharing experience in your team. Make it a tradition. And then once you see, okay, we found something interesting and that actually can be applied to our problem, which we could not solve, let's try it out. And then you go back to the industry research model, which I showed you at the beginning. So that was it from my side for today. Thank you very much for coming, for listening. As I said, those were like my observations and my experience, and I will be happy to hear like your stories, your experience, how you deal with the problem of research in your team, how you deal it with the different products, not necessarily with data products. So I'm looking forward to your questions. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much, Katya. It was an amazing talk. So now we are open for some questions. Let's see, do we have any questions on YouTube? Okay, till then, I think I can have a question maybe. So when you actually, so there are certain companies which are like small companies rather than huge companies. And we have, like, your different products are paid by different customers. Like, there could be some customer specific products, not really a generic product. Then how do you put research? Because there are certain customers, maybe they're not really in for the research because we have lesser developers and we need to have different priorities because there are bugs or some other urgent priorities. So how do you integrate research then? What's the concept when, like, how can you actually integrate research that time?
Well, that's the art of prioritization, right? You have it's really you have your backlog. You're the master of your backlog, and you have a bunch of user stories. You prioritize them. How you do it is actually up to you, right? Like it's like really you decide as a product owner, of course, with your team, what you believe will bring most impact. So at the end of the day, your customers, they want to have a working product, right? They might want to have a specific functionality, some features. So that's what they're paying for. And as long as it's there, as long as it's working, as long as it meets the requirement, that's fine. And how you get there, that's up to you. It's up to your team. If you say you believe that you tried out all low-hanging fruits and it doesn't work, but like if they really want to have this functionality and you are like pretty confident, roundabout, you're confident 80% that you want to invest this time, you want to invest like this week or 2 weeks, maybe even only 3 days, into this approach and do some research on this, just go ahead and do it. The rule of, you always try first what is easier, what you believe will take less time, so smaller effort with a bigger impact. But if it doesn't work, if you run out of those ideas, yeah, then like, why not? As long as it solves the problem, I think that's fine.
Okay, super, thank you. So we have another question from Jens. How much time percentage do you allocate to your team for research?
In our case, currently, like we don't really have, let's say, we don't say we spend 20 or 30% of time. We don't have such hard restrictions. So whenever we feel like we need to do some research, whenever we feel like we are running out of ideas, then we just do it. And also, like from my experience, it's not like you normally don't schedule research stories. I say, okay, I'm designing my roadmap for the next quarter. Let me design some, let me plan some research time for May. Normally, it doesn't work like this, at least in our team. So you start, you have a problem. And you think, okay, I might want to to research in that area, and then at the beginning it might be just a whole long research period. But then when you already when it's not terra incognita for you anymore, when it's not something brand new, but when you know, okay, this solution works for these problems, it will work for us in this case with such restrictions, and we need also to do something on backend side to really deploy it afterwards, then it actually becomes not a research, but it transforms slowly into like a proper user stories, which you can estimate in terms of story points or whatever you do. So research tends to take long time at the beginning, but then if it goes successful, right, if like it goes direction of deployment, then it transforms into like regular user stories. At least that's how it works in field of machine learning. I can imagine that like if you're working purely on like features, then it's somehow different, might be a bit different for you.
Thank you so much. And I think on the same line, we have a question from YouTube by Ashwin. How do you get management buy-in for research projects where the value add cannot be seen very quickly? For example, what happens when you're building something that can change how your product works?
So the question is how I convince my management, right? How communicate it to my...
Exactly, because the value is not very prompt. Like you cannot really see the value quickly.
Exactly, that is a very good point, and that is actually the hard part. And here it has a lot to do with the culture you have in your company, whether your company and your management is open to experimenting, whether they are set up on growth, or they're like a really like, result. So try to convince, right? Like, so I always start with the assumption that we are all grown-ups, we are all reasonable people, and we are all having the same goal. We want to solve problems, we want to make products better, we want to make customers happy. And I think this is where we are all, I mean me, my team, management, we are on the same page. And we just need to agree on the we can take different paths to get to the happy users and good product, and we just need to agree on how to get there, right? And it might take time, but like as long as you have proper arguments and proper reasoning, I think because we all have the same goal. So as long as your management sees that this goal can be achieved with the research, and that can be done, as I said, like with a proper documentation, convincing documentation, really reporting on how much time you spent on what are the results, what are the expected results. Try to fail as quick as possible. Try to talk to your management in terms of numbers and KPIs. So if you can translate your research results into, so like in my case, that would be like I can increase precision in my classifier by 50%, right? So my users will read, when they read fake news, they will never see any false positives. So they will never read any real news in the stream of fake news, or the other way around. Like if they were interested in real news, then no fake news piece of fake news will leak into the stream. and if I can turn it into like churn rate, stickiness of my users, so precision of classified content, in terms of time that I can predict that my users will spend more time on my page. So if I can translate research into these numbers and KPIs, I believe that like even the most conservative and stubborn management will actually agree that yes, that's the way to go. And here, of course, like really some success stories are important. So try to start your research with something which is you quite sure will be successful, to show that yes, it works. Like it's a small like psychological trick that you show, yeah, we did some research, it works, see how awesome it is. And then like next time you have a little bit of playing field for failure, you can take a bit more time, but then like like when the company knows that it can work and they have seen that this working, then I think that should be fine.
Super. Thank you so much for the answer. Do we have any more questions? Okay, oh, okay. We got thanks for your insight. Very useful. That's from Ashwin. That's nice.
Thank you for the feedback.
Okay. Till then, I can actually, I mean, when I was working in my current company, so we are not very product-based company, like database-driven company. We are very normal, like normal feature-based. Actually, I'm a developer, so I'm working as a feature-based developer. So when I see the research, importance of research as a developer, it's kind of true. I mean, this topic is kind of exciting for me as well, because we initially we just had tickets related to like user stories, or we had to implement stuff rather than time given for the concept to decide something how to really work on, so that we can avoid the technical debts. So recently I worked onto a ticket in which time box the whole research, and it actually helped to avoid the technical debt in like near future, which was pretty cool. So I think research is an important thing to do. I mean, that's just my experience as a non-data product company.
And how so
Okay.
when you talk about research as a, let's say, feature developer,
Uh-huh.
what is it for you then? Like, is it more like just working, experimenting with new tools, let's say, with new languages, or?
So basically, so I'm a backend developer. So when we create certain endpoints or some some features, what happens is there could be some particular tool or a library in the language which doesn't work for to implement a particular feature, right? So we need to understand whether that particular library would work or not. So for doing that, we actually took some time box event, like for example, whether that particular okay, so I'll give an example in Python. There is, we need to stream a particular data from the customer side. Whether this is possible from in the framework which we are currently using or not. So this was something which we had to investigate, and this took time. I mean, it could be done as a normal user story as well. In the whole epic, surely, but I think having a time box event made it much more easier on me as a developer, because I got to know what could be in the near future, create a technical debt, and I mean, in the whole long run, I think that would be quite helpful for the product development, like from all the perspective, and the customers would also be happier because we would not dissatisfy with them with some other bugs which are coming up. So this was pretty cool when we use new tools, we use new features of the particular language or the framework which we never knew before. So we learned a lot during the whole experiment. That was cool.
Right. Yeah,
Yes.
I think it's also important to have like the proper balance. In my previous company, we had like actually like a really dedicated research team, which was doing research only. And when you were trying to convince people from other teams, hey, do you want to join our research team? Everyone would say, yes, I love research, and like it's very interesting, and I want to be technically fit and up to date, but I also want the results of my work to be seen by customers. So people, developers, like really appreciate this combination of really delivering something to people to use, and also to play around, to experiment with something new.
True. That's kind of it. Like, I mean, I know the feeling. So it's exactly like that. Like, you research something and then you feel like, okay, this would work. So if a research always ends up in the positive thing, it's kind of, it makes you happy. So that's cool. Yes. Exactly, because initially I thought the research would only be based onto the data product management kind of stuff. Because let's face the fact, in machine learning, there is always like you need to learn after every other iteration or after every other epoch. So there is something good precision or some other KPIs basically, which kind of changes. But then it could also be done in the normal world as well, like the concept tickets we consider in our company as concept tickets. So that's good.
Concept. Okay, that's an interesting term.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Mhm,
Research is good. Research is good, but yeah,
mhm.
think I think as long as a product owner, people always say about product managers as a voice of customers. So like when you have to think from the customer mindset. And which is true, I completely agree to it. But I think what is also important as a product manager, you have to think in terms of your team and what makes your team happy and productive. So it's and as long as they want to try out something new, I think it's totally fine. So your team
Sure,
has to be happy.
exactly. So we have one question from Catherine. Are still implement feature just out of from a feeling? Okay, do we still implement a feature just out from a feeling? Like, should we? I think this is the question, Catherine, if I'm understood correctly, because yeah. So do we still implement a feature just out from a feeling? That's the question.
Um, well, okay. I'll answer the question the way I understand it. I hope that's
Okay.
fine. So if you mean that how we come up with the features, whether it's like based on our feeling or whether we collect some data and do some research, I would always go for the latter. So like you conduct your user surveys, you ask for your users what features they are missing. You run some A/B tests, for example, to compare different features, different options, and then you pick the one that performs the best. And again, like you always have to measure it in terms of your KPIs and in terms of metrics you use to measure the success of your product, and that's probably how you decide on features to implement. So I would say it's mostly the decision which feature to implement is usually and should be usually data driven. Of course, I think you as a product manager, you always have to rely on your intuition and your experience to a certain degree. But like if you're like pretty new in the industry, or like if you are pretty new with this concrete product, so you don't feel your customers, you don't feel your users that well yet, then I think feeling might be a bit tricky. And that's what I've seen from my side. So like I think, okay, I would really do it this way, and I like it. It's an awesome design, it's an awesome feature, it's so convenient to use. I would love it as a user. And then like I run an A/B test, and I find out that only 10% of users prefer my feature or like my design compared to others. So it can be like what I think as a user might not reflect what majority of other users think. So I hope that answers the question.
Thank you so much. I hope, Catherine, we are on the right track. Let's see. Okay. I have one last question. This is really out of the topic, maybe, but do you think including, for example, you included research onto the product backlog? Do you think including UX also makes sense in the product backlog? Like, I mean, so we always keep some stuff always away from the product backlog. Like we have some bugs, or like if it's a maintenance team, it's always bugs or some small little feature request from the customer side. But how about like considering the UX and the UI feel of the product? Does that also, I mean, should be included into the product backlog? And how much research should we really do in that particular field as well?
I would say as long as you have UI UX designers on your team, why not? Sure.
Mhm,
Like I mean, in terms of like Backlog also serves for documentation to track what
mhm,
has been done, and if you invest time into UI and UX, and you have team members who do it, like I mean, why not? I think it's also for them to organize their job, to track, to report. It's easier. So absolutely. Um, And in terms of research, yeah, sure. I think for UI and UX, I believe you can also have sort of two types of research. So first, like, as really to understand what users need, what users want. That can be done in terms of in shape of like smoke tests or A/B tests or user surveys. That is also like a research, right? But that can be done by probably product manager together with your UI designer. If you need some prototype or front-end prototype, then yeah, bring a developer to help you with this UI. But it can also be like a research in terms of you say your UX designer is using one framework for prototyping, like I don't know, Figma or something, and then they want to try a different tool, and they say, hey, okay, you know, I want to invest 1 week, so this will be like sort of my learning. I will be investing this time into myself, you know. So for this 1 week, I will be probably slower on delivering designs. But yeah, in the future, I hope that it will be better. It will be more convenient for me. Then yeah, why not?
Super. Okay, thank you so much, Katya. And I think that's all for today. And thank you so much for an amazing talk. It was really inspiring and exciting for me, at least. I hope for the other people as well. And have a great morning, great start to Thursday. Bye bye.
Have a good day. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you, Katya.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
everyone. Bye.
Bye.